Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not necessary to be in a database, right?
No, it might not be in a database. It could just be in a JSON format like this. So you can store that
Okay.
in your program. But the reason why we use database is because they are persistent. So even if you close your program, you still have your data. But if you store them like
Okay.
this, once you close your program, you would lose that data.
Data. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to get that clarity.
Okay. So any other question? So um if there are no other questions, let me see this. This was something that someone mentioned in the last class. So it says here that create an object named person with the following properties. So the object would have name, age, city. Then you should log the person object to the console. Then we should add an object method that would introduce the person. We should add a method named introduce to the person object. The introduce method should return a string introducing the person with their name, age, and city. Then we call the introduce method and we log the result to the console. So who can attempt this and send the solution to the chat box, or who can just like go over how someone would go about this. So the first step in this case would be to create the object. And to do that is very straightforward. So we just create a person object. So I would say let person be equal to this object, and this person would have a name, let's say John. The person would have age, let's say 30, and finally city, let's say Lagos. So just like that, we have finished this first part. Then it says log the person to the console. So we should log the person object to the console. So that's simply console.log person. So I can run node index.js. So and we can see our person object here. Now the next step says add um add a method named introduce to the person object. So we would add that method inside of our object because it is an object method. So this is going to be introduce, and this object method is simply going to log. So let's say console.log. Sorry, this should be colon. So let's say console.log. Um, then we use template string. And you say hello, my name is. So we would say this dot name. So this represents this object, this particular object that we are dealing with. So we will get the name value from this object. So my name is this, comma, my age is this dot age, and finally I am from, or I am based in Lagos. So this dot city. Emmanuel, do you have any question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I was the one that sent the question.
Okay.
So what is that this dot? What does it work for?
So this represents the particular object we are dealing with. So which in this case is the person object. But because we
What about we use person dot name? Is it not going to work?
so we use person dot name if we are accessing it outside of the object. But because we are still talking about this particular object inside of the object, that is why we are accessing it in that's why we are using this. So let's say for example we wanted to do this outside of the object, we would say person dot name. We all know that. But because this is an object method, we cannot use person dot name because it won't recognize that. So it will only recognize this that is represent
Sorry, another thing is why is the introduce inside the object? Why
because
can't it be outside?
it is an object method. That's what the question says. Add a method named introduce to the person object. So if we have it outside, then it is just a global method. So if I say function introduce, this is also a method, but it is global. Like it doesn't have anything to do with this object. But the question says that we should create an object method called introduce. So the other properties we have as well, they are the object's property. So the introduce method is also the object method. So if you want to have your function outside, you would have the same thing. But in this case, rather than saying this, because it doesn't have anything to do with the person, so this won't work in this case because it won't be representing anything. It won't be referencing anything. So here, this is where we can now say person because we are now outside of the object. And if I say this, it won't have any reference to go to. But when I am inside of my object, I need to use the this keyword because I am talking about the particular object which I am inside of. So the reason why we are not doing this outside of my object is because the question says we should create a method called introduce that would be an object method. So you can see the question you sent, it says object method, that we should add a method named introduce to the person object. And this here is my person object. So the method has to be inside of the object, which JavaScript allows us to. So here I have created a function. Maybe I should. So function and method are the same thing. Um, so here we have our function called introduce. Functions and methods are the same thing. So you can say object function or object method. We are still talking about the same thing. It is just a block of code that performs some action. So rather than our properties that just hold value. So properties hold value, but functions perform action. So we have three properties here: name, age, and city, that hold the values of John, 30, and Lagos, respectively, for this person object. Now, we want to create a method for this same person object that is going to greet the person. So that would send a message in our console. So here, we definitely need to perform some action, which can only be done using functions. So that is why I need to create a method or a function. We are still talking about the same thing, methods and functions, inside of my person object. And now to access the properties of this, to access the property values I have in my object, I need to use the this keyword because I am still inside of the object. So let's assume I am outside of the object. Then I would need to call the object itself. So JavaScript can look through my program, then find this object. So it is going to find this object, then look inside the object for a name, then it will return the value to me. But because I am still inside of the object in my introduce function, I cannot call person because at this point, JavaScript has not finished compiling this object. So it would not know that this person object even exists while it is still inside of the object. But when I say this, JavaScript knows that I am referring to the object which I am inside, which this function is inside, which is the person object. So because I am still inside of the function, I need to use the this keyword. So JavaScript knows that I am talking about this particular object. But if I use the person object here directly, JavaScript would not recognize that person because it would have not finished compiling the person object. So that is why we are using the this keyword. So this helps us to reference the particular object or the particular item we are working with in JavaScript. So wait, let me run this program. So after doing all that, I would need to call my introduce function. So now, because I am outside of the function, I would say person dot introduce, then I would execute the function just like that. So here we can see, okay, so it is returning undefined. So there is something wrong with this function. Let's say we use this. So let's try this first, for example.